The mission of the Mesoamerican Reef Leadership Program is to contribute to the conservation of the Mesoamerican Reef, or MAR, through development and capacity building of local leaders with innovative projects. The current generation of leaders is focusing on sustainable tourism and coastal development in the Mesoamerican Reef region. You can find more information at www.marleaders.org. Mar Vision now has the pleasure of introducing Lori Maddox, Associate Director of Environmental Law Alliance Worldwide for Mexico and Central America. Today, Lori will be talking about civil society organizations and their role in environmental legislation. She will be addressing some of the following topics: recurrent coastal development legislation issues in the Mar, legislation tools for regulating coastal development, effective strategies to involve society in decision-making processes, and regional success stories. So, without further ado, we give you Lori Maddox. Lori, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you very much for having me. I want to start by saying that I really appreciate all of the thoughtful questions that I got from the Leadership Program Fellows. I'll try to answer all of your questions and give you an overview of what I think are the most important things for you to continue to research about environmental law and public participation in the Mesoamerican Reef region. I won't be able to comprehensively answer all your questions in the short time we have, so I invite you to please continue the conversation with me through the Leadership Program website. This podcast should be the beginning of our conversation, not the end. I'll also share some written resources with you through the website that you can use to further explore the world of environmental law. And when I can't answer your questions, I'll help you find the answers. E-Law is a network of about 300 pioneering advocates in 70 countries around the world who are building from the ground up the field of public interest environmental law. Environmental law is a relatively new discipline developed over the last 40 or 50 years, and public interest environmental law is even newer. E-Law advocates mostly work outside government and outside corporations. Their clients are conservationists and citizens who are most affected by environmental problems. These local advocates are the true experts in the environmental laws of their countries. They know best how to creatively use law to help citizens participate in environmental decision-making within the context of their own social, legal, and cultural framework. I can give you some general guidance, but when we take this conversation to a deeper level for country-specific legal frameworks and questions, we'll enlist them to help us. E-Law's primary contribution to protecting the Mesoamerican Reef is helping local advocates in the region develop strong organizations and get access to the legal and scientific resources they need to use law to protect resources and fight for environmental justice. For example, Clarissa Vega is an attorney in Tegucigalpa who some of you know. Clarissa used to be an environmental prosecutor in Honduras, but she left that position because the government was not as aggressive as Clarissa wanted to be to protect the people of Honduras and Honduras's natural resources. With our support, Clarissa launched the Instituto de Derecho Ambiental de Honduras, or IDAMHO, in 2004. Now, Clarissa and her colleagues represent citizens all over Honduras. Clarissa is committed to making the tool of law available to people in Honduras. In addition to going to court, she also spends time in communities telling people about legal tools that they can use with and without a lawyer to protect natural resources. In each of your countries, at least one counterpart organization, and usually more than one lawyer like Clarissa, exists, and they work together as the E-Law Mesoamerican Legal Strategy Group. In my experience, the most effective legal tool for involving society in decision-making processes is the environmental impact assessment system. Each of the countries has laws that require that environmental impact assessments be performed before development activities can occur. But the agencies that are charged with writing implementing regulations for how and when the EIAs are performed have a lot of discretion. For example, in Belize, it used to be the case that any proposed oil development activities required an EIA. In the last few years, the regulations changed, and now exploring for oil requires a different, lower level of scrutiny and evaluation than extracting oil. We all know that exploring for oil involves destruction of habitat. Shouldn't you have to do an equally thorough evaluation in both cases? In Honduras, the Sistema Nacional de Evaluación de Impactos Ambientales, or SINEA, was put in place in the late 1990s and requires that impacts be assessed before permission is given to develop a project. In February of this year, the Natural Resource Agency there tried to pass new regulations that would substantially downgrade the required assessments. Idaho has filed an action against this step in the Constitutional Court. These laws are an extremely important and effective legal tool, and citizens should both participate in EIA processes on specific projects and speak out against continuing efforts to erode or undermine EIA processes. This points to a big overarching problem that exists not in the region but everywhere in the world. The tension between the need to develop and have a stable economy and the need to protect the natural resources upon which everything depends. How that tension manifests in the area of environmental regulation is that the agencies that are in charge of making money, like ministries of energy and mines, have much bigger budgets than the agencies that are in charge of protecting natural resources, like the ministries of natural resources or Department of Environment. Public interest lawyers bring lawsuits against natural resource agencies for not doing their jobs, in part because it forces systemic change. It forces the governments to address the problem of underfunded natural resource agencies with very big and important jobs to do. One of you asked about ecological zoning ordinances and coastal zone planning. My answer to that question is that, yes, to some degree, these tools have been useful in changing coastal development plans. Not halting, but changing development plans. With regard to coastal planning, those tools will be most effective when they include accountability structures or enforcement structures. In other words, the master plan for Ambergris Key will only be as effective as the enforcement mechanisms that back up the plan. What happens when a proposed development violates the plan? Who has authority to enforce the plan and how? These things must be explicit, or the plan will actually exist only on paper. So what has worked? Litigation against the Aramacao Resort in southern Belize was effective, even though the court ruled against the plaintiffs on the substance of the case. The long delay and the hard look and the attention that was drawn by that case either bankrupted or scared away the developer, at least for the moment. Now, a new project has emerged to build the Placencia Marina a few hundred yards down the beach. Litigation against the shipping company that allowed the Westerhaven to run aground and destroy a huge portion of the reef was successful in that the court awarded damages against that company. Community outreach in Izabal in Guatemala to educate fishing communities about regulations that protect certain marine species was effective in reducing the take of those species. Also in Guatemala, lawyers are promoting ownership of natural resources by citizens who want to develop watershed-based management strategies and teaching those citizens where to turn when they spot violations of water quality standards. When people know what will happen to their water supply if a resort is built next door and they know that laws exist that are supposed to protect their rights, they will hold governments to a higher standard. It helps for people to know that other communities around the world have successfully fought and won battles just like theirs. And through the Elon Network, we share these stories to inspire and motivate communities to use law to take charge of their futures. In general, what's effective is putting the power of the law into the hands of the people, whether it's through litigation or EIA consultations or natural resource planning with citizens involved at every step of the way. Law is a tool that can be used to empower people. The last questions you asked are related to cruise ship practices. First, how can we limit water taking and trash dumping by cruise ships? What I would do is look first to strengthening domestic regulation of cruise ship practices and strengthen enforcement of environmental laws, enforcement mechanisms about those regulations. Second, I look to regional policy initiatives. I know that a comparative analysis of cruise ship policies and proposals was done a few years ago by the MBRS project, but I'm not sure what has happened to that work. Finally, I'm not aware of any law that requires cruise ship companies to invest a portion of their revenues in conservation projects in other countries or anywhere, but it could certainly be proposed in each of your countries that cruise ships operating in your country must invest in conservation at some predefined level through some specific mechanism. I'd be careful to make sure that if it comes in the form of a head tax, that the money goes specifically to conservation, is earmarked for conservation, and doesn't only go to the general fund of the country. Crafting a creative legal tool to address this problem is not the challenge. The challenge in this case is political will. In any case, if you each push for equivalent standards in each of your own countries, you collectively raise the bottom line for cruise operators in the region. I look forward to interacting with you on your website and pointing you to other resources to answer any remaining questions. Thanks for your commitment to conservation and for inviting me to participate.
Lori, thanks so much for your contribution. We hope you can stay connected to the Mesoamerican Reef Leadership Exchange Network that is forming.
Thanks for inviting me, and I look forward to working with you.